Hi there and welcome to another weekend worksheet. Today we're going to keep describing experiences because there are a lot of IELTS speaking part 2 questions where you have to talk about things you did in the past and talk about them for 2 minutes. So you basically have to tell a 2-minute story. We have 2 learning goals today. The first goal is learning adverbs of opinion. And secondly, we're going to practice using them in your stories to add your opinion to experiences or events that happened throughout your story. This allows you to use a greater variety of vocabulary, talk a bit longer, and help the listener, which is the examiner, follow your story and understand how you felt while it was happening. First, let's discover the vocabulary. In the box, I have several adverbs of opinion. They include luckily or fortunately, amazingly, obviously, sadly, surprisingly, stupidly, suddenly, actually. So let's look at the definitions of these words first. The first one is an example. I can say, it was lucky that there was not a lot of traffic. That is a correct sentence. It is correct to say for the IELTS. However, we can condense this into one word, which is luckily. There was not a lot of traffic. Fortunately, there was not a lot of traffic. Adding this phrase means we think it's a good thing that this happened. So, luckily, unfortunately, is taken. What is the adverb of opinion for it was amazing that? It was amazing that she finished medical school in only 3 years. Of course, the adverb is amazingly. Amazingly means I think that is amazing, and it is. If you finish a medical degree in 3 years, that's amazing because it usually takes 4 or 5 or more. Sentence B, it was sad that tickets were already sold out. Sadly. Sadly, the tickets were already sold out. Maybe I really wanted to go to this concert, but sadly, I couldn't. Sadly shows that I felt this was a sad thing to happen, and this is a bad, unhappy moment in my story. Sentence C, it was obvious that the sea was too dangerous to swim in. It was obvious that, in one word, obviously. Obviously, the sea was too dangerous to swim in. You could also say it was clear that the sea was too dangerous, and the adverb would be clearly. You don't have to be an expert diver or a sailor to look at the ocean, the water, and see that it was too dangerous. Maybe there were big waves, so if you went swimming, you could be pulled out to sea and drowned. So obviously, you shouldn't go in there. Saying this means, in my opinion, it was clear, it was easy to understand that it was dangerous to swim. So, let's do another set. We've used luckily, amazingly, obviously, and sadly. D is, it was surprising that my grandmother's old TV still works. It was surprising that. In one word, surprisingly. Surprisingly, my mother's old TV still works. Adding this means I didn't think it would work, but it did. What a surprise. This means it was different from what I expected at the time. Sentence E. It was stupid. I forgot to charge my phone. It was stupid, stupidly. Stupidly, I forgot to charge my phone before the flight. Sometimes you can't always charge your phone on a plane, or maybe you can't charge your phone on a train because you don't have the right plug. And in my opinion, that was stupid. That was a silly mistake. F. It was interesting, or it is not well known, that Kyoto used to be the capital of Japan before Tokyo. This is actually. Actually means, in my opinion, this is interesting. I think it's interesting that Kyoto was the capital. Maybe I think that you don't know that. Maybe this is new information for you. So, actually, did you know Kyoto used to be the capital of Japan before Tokyo? This is me adding something interesting, or something that I believe is interesting for you. So finally, it was quickly very different when a deer ran across the road right in front of us. When something changes very quickly, if something surprises you, or the situation very quickly becomes different, it happens suddenly. This is for dramatic, quick changes in your story. You can use this as a storytelling device to make your story a bit more emotional, a bit more engaging, a bit more dramatic. Suddenly, a deer ran across the road right in front of us. It's something you didn't expect to happen, and it's an interesting part of your story. So, those are some adverbs of opinion which you can use when you share your own experiences. Next, we're going to do a little bit of an open, more creative exercise with less control than previous worksheets. This time, I want you to read the sentence and maybe pause the video and give yourself some time to think about a situation or an event that matches the adverb of opinion. For example, if your part 2 question was, describe a time when you saw a famous person, I've got amazingly and unfortunately. The start of these sentences signals that what will happen is very different. Amazingly, if I hear amazingly, I think the next part will be something good, exciting, fantastic, amazing. But if you start your sentence with unfortunately, I expect something sad or unhappy or something you didn't want. So you can signal to the listener kind of what's going to happen next and help them follow more easily. So describing a time when you saw a famous person, I went into the lift, the elevator, and I saw a famous TV actor. Okay. Amazingly, he smiled and nodded at me and then asked me which floor I needed. So the actor was standing in the lift, the elevator, and he offered to push the button for us to go up. However, I could say, unfortunately, I was too nervous to ask him for an autograph or for a picture. So, I want you to imagine different events or different experiences based on the adverb at the beginning. Next one. Describe a time you got lost and needed help. The taxi driver said we were at the address, but I couldn't see our hotel anywhere. So, the first experience starts with luckily. So, what would be a positive, lucky, fortunate situation when you arrived in a taxi, but you couldn't see your hotel? We could say, luckily, I managed to find the address, maybe to find the real address of the hotel on my phone and show him where to go. That's lucky, because that sounds like a more positive and happier story. So, what if the story continued with suddenly? You can pause the video, think of your own ending, and then I'll give you mine. Any ideas? Here's what I could say. Suddenly, I spotted the sign out of the window, and I realized that we were in the right place. So that's suddenly everything changed. Suddenly I wasn't lost, I wasn't nervous, I wasn't confused. I knew where we needed to be. Okay, imagine your part 2 question was, describe a time when your computer stopped working. The story goes, there was water leaking from the ceiling and dripping directly onto my laptop. So we have 2 outcomes here, 2 events. The first one is obviously. Obviously means it was obvious that, it was clear that. So can you think of an event to put in there? How about this? Obviously, the laptop was ruined. I lost most... let's change my mind. I tried turning it on, but nothing happened. It was broken. Another event could be with sadly. Sadly, I lost all my data and my homework. I had to go to a computer repair shop and get it fixed. Oh, I can't fit it in there. Okay. So it shows how the first word really changes what I expect to hear. You can use this for positive experiences or negative ones, or you could include both within the same story. What's stopping you? Okay, here are some more. Describe a time when you had to use a foreign language. The story goes, I had learned a few English phrases using an app on my phone, but I couldn't say much. The first scenario starts with actually. So you can pause the video, think of an event that would continue from actually. I could say, actually, the app had a lot of useful phrases, which helped me talk to locals and get directions. So, actually, it was interesting that it helped. This is actually quite positive. However, I could say, stupidly. What would be an event following stupidly? Maybe you could say, stupidly, when I was under pressure to speak to a real native speaker, I forgot everything I learned. Now, I know that happens. This happens to me too when I speak another language, but it's hard not to feel a bit silly when it does happen. Okay. Describe a time when you saw an animal in the wild. The story goes, I was playing in the woods with my friends when I saw a snake climbing a tree. So, two outcomes here. Obviously, what kind of event would follow obviously? What is an obvious thing to happen next? How about, obviously, it was too dangerous to touch, so we left it alone and went to another part of the woods. What if the story went surprisingly? What would be a surprising thing to happen next? Surprisingly, it was quite calm. It was quite calm when we got close to it, and my friend even touched it. That's surprising. I would be surprised if that was the real story. One more. Describe a time when you had to wait in a long queue. Queue, of course, is the British word for a line. Sorry? So, I arrived at the bank, but there was already a line coming out of the door. Fortunately, it's the first one. What would be a fortunate thing to happen next? You could say, fortunately, the tellers saw every customer quickly, and I was soon near the front. What would be an unfortunate thing to happen next? How about, unfortunately, after 30 minutes of waiting, I ran out of time and I had to go back to work. Maybe back to work and to try again tomorrow. So, you can have very different outcomes, or different students will have very different experiences. So it's helpful to tell the listener what to expect before you tell them if something good happened or if something bad happened. It can help the teacher, the examiner, mentally prepare for what's about to come, and you certainly sound like you have more control over your stories. So, this exercise you saw here is exactly the same as one you can find in the worksheets that I have on my store. It says Part 1 and Part 2 worksheets, but I've actually uploaded my first Part 3 worksheet, just the one, and you can find them through that link here and also in the description below. So if you enjoyed this process, if you like this preparation method for IELTS speaking, you can find more of the same with more grammar points, vocabulary, and similar things we've done in previous weekend worksheets right there. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something, and I will see you next weekend. Bye-bye.